Rick Hale.
Brett Caldwell.
Rick Hale, the author.
Oh boy.
I can now call you that. Man, we're going on this session 3. We're diving into this book, Stop Settling, finding clear directions for a regret-free life. How you feeling? I know you were nervous when you first put this out. How are you feeling now?
Well, you just don't know till you know. It's like painting a picture. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. And until you get feedback, you don't know. But I'm proud to say, just inside of a couple of weeks, we've already sold, close to 100 books. And I'm honored and flattered, and it's just cool. But it's going well, and the feedback's been great. And again, it's my story and it's lessons learned, and my goal is to give back more than I've ever received. And this is one gesture and thing towards that.
I'm going to say this because I know your humility, you wouldn't say it. But privately, you've shared how you've been lit up as a person by some of the feedback and comments people have left and shared with you. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, validating someone else who's trying hard is a beautiful gift, and my friends are doing it, and I appreciate it.
I love it. All right, so today's about life with purpose. And we talk about this, we call it a couple different things, but at the end of the day, life with purpose is really about that power, or I guess you could say the disempowering thing of not having a purpose would be the opposite of it. But why is this such, it's chapter 2 in your book. It's right out front, right?
It is. And part of the book is about breaking down life into bite-sized pieces and then assembling them in a way, with a plan, so that you feel like you have purpose behind you. And there's just, life can be complicated. And the idea is to uncomplicate it, if you will. And I've found that, people without purpose just don't succeed at a high level. You've got to, it's the fuel that drives you to wake up and do hard things that lead to better outcomes and, lessons that you not just should experience and learn from that, but your body screams and craves. Man, we're meant to be challenged, and we're meant to overcome, and we're meant to, the struggle's real, but for purpose.
Yeah. And I think what's important about it is it takes work. Like, you actually have to work on you to be able to discover what that purpose is. And you've got to ask yourself questions. You probably need people helping you discover it. Talk to me a little bit, like we use the phrase, the big why, like your big why of what your purpose in life is. Yet, my experience, most people struggle with this conversation.
Yeah, it's rare that someone doesn't. And that should be comforting to anyone listening. Like, if I said, hey, what's your big why? And you it's not like a singular life's mission statement of a sentence or two. That's super rare. It almost doesn't happen. You'd have to be a really evolved human being to simplify your life into one sentence. And so again, back to the thinking that life worth living isn't about a singular event or one experience or one skill or one activity. It's the collection of activities that create holistic joy, and happiness is honoring all aspects of yourself. And again, in the book, I break it down into 12 categories to help people get really clear in what each lane or each sliver or spoke looks like, so that when you put it together, it becomes a highly functioning, life wheel and success story.
Yeah. So there's this concept of little whys. Break that down a little bit for me.
Well, little whys are just making sure that you're doing what you're supposed to do to get the outcomes you're after in life. We've all heard stories and know people who've, neglected health for the sake of a career, or neglected family. And so, the little why would be, what little things can you do daily or regularly in each category, that when you stack it end to end a year from now, you wake up, fulfilled, and wake up purposefully built, that you're on the path you're supposed to be on, and you haven't thrown, some important elements for the sake of others out the window along the way. But it's those little things that'll, it's like slowly and then suddenly. That's how, bankruptcy and failure, but also success is the same way. But little bites taken every day add up to big bites and a full life.
Absolutely. I was taught a long time ago that people like to look good and be right. So a lot of times when we talk about purpose or a big why or things like that, my opinion here is a lot of people will tell us their purpose is what society says it should be, or what they think is they're supposed to say. Yet it actually works against them because it's not what's in here creating that fuel to get them where they want to go. What would you say to somebody that just kind of has that scripted response, and it's probably sounds great because that's what it's supposed to sound like, yet it's not really the fuel driving them in life?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest crime on the planet is living someone else's expectation in life instead of the one you were intended for. And so, again, back to the book, only because the one thing I've learned is the clearer you get about each spoke in the life wheel, and the clearer you get about how to stage an experiential path in each day strategically, the easier it is to feel that sense of progress and potential. And the flaw today is that we all live in this media, social media world of, everyone's throwing up their highlight reel, and all it looks like is just perfection and joy. And, and then, the flip side is there's that side of it. And there's not a lot of middle of the roaders who are sincere, honest, and posting a fair sampling of what their world really looks like. But then they're the people that just bleed all over everybody about how awful and terrible, and they're spinning negative news. And that's even worse. But at the end of the day, it's like, the best advice I can give you is don't judge your insides by other people's outsides. And the only way to properly judge your insides is to break it down and be honest and transparent with yourself. And it sometimes requires a mentor, a coach, someone to really play the mirror for you and help you see what you don't see in yourself.
Yeah. And a lot of times I think it just starts with asking yourself some tough questions too.
It does. And that's the goal in the book too, is at the end of each chapter, there are a series of, 5 to 8 questions just to make sure that your head's on right relative to the concepts that I'm sharing and the stories that have impacted me.
Yeah. And we'll come back to that here in a minute. So
Uh-huh.
Rick, you're an author, so you're much smarter than me, but there's this word called Pygmalion. Am I saying that right?
Pygmalion Effect. Yeah.
In the book, I had to go look it up. Tell me about that.
Well, you'll never live into anything that's not preconceived. Like it's basically says you're kind of the average of the people around you, and you're impacted by your self view. And we also have the capacity to elevate our self view. It just takes a high level thinker to be able to do that. And the story goes, and the way it really originated with the poet Ovid, who was frustrated with the level or caliber and class and the standards for women in his village. This goes way, way, way back, an old story. And instead of continuing to struggle to find the perfect person, he decided to create the perfect person. And he was a sculptor, and he sculpted this. Galatea was her name. He named her, and he literally carved his ideal perfection. And then the story goes, he kissed her and it came to life. And that's evolved into a book, and then it also became the Broadway musical, the hit My Fair Lady. So that was the context for the story. But why I think people are so drawn to that story is that we all have the ability to craft that perfect being, not necessarily your spouse or your mate, but yourself. Like that was the overlay, is what does the perfect you look like? Because we're all mirrors. And if you're not the best version of yourself, you're not going to attract the best version of other people. Like kind of track. So this is really an important topic, to be honest, is how do you see yourself, and what's the easiest way to level up relative to your self view and your self image?
Yeah. We talk about those vision boards and exercises that people do, right? Put a picture of a skinny Brett on a board and go, hey, I'm going towards this visualization, but it's really this effect, right? Like you have to see it in your mind before you can ever make it manifest in reality.
100%. There's 2 voices going on, the one in your head and your heart, and then the one that you profess to the universe, which is your actual speaking voice. And, it's like you standing up in a room saying, here are my goals. But inside, if the voice is, those are unrealistic, you're incapable, you don't have what it takes. I think it's not if, it's when you derail from pursuing those goals, because you have to have that fuel, and you have to get clear on why it's important, and then why you deserve it. And then the next step is just executables. What's the plan? What's the daily activity that puts you 1 inch closer?
There you go. One of the things that I love about this book is you tell a pretty crazy story around a young boy and who you were. And I'm going to kick it to you, but I think we should probably tease that there's a really cool story in the book. And if you've ever watched Mojo Monday, you might have told that story before.
I might have.
Yet I want you to maybe tease it, but what's the lesson? Because it really speaks to this, right?
Yeah. Well, and I'll start with a statement and belief is that, again, so, as much as we talk about crafting the perfect you in your heart and mind and breaking it down, there's something really powerful when an external, a person or an experience validates what you think about yourself and what you're capable of. And it reinforces. And that's, again, that's like fuel. And the story in the book is that, I saved a drowning victim when I was only 10 years old. And, I was a pretty good swimmer, but there should have been an adult there, and there wasn't, and there was, but I'll leave it to the book. It's an interesting story. But the moral of the story had nothing to do with the fact that I took a chance and almost drowned myself trying to save a boy when I was really young. But it's that I went back and shared it with my grandmother, and my grandmother was brilliant in that moment. And she just, instead of like going, "Oh, you're the best, you're the best, you're the best," she like planted this seed that I have capacity to change the world and save lives and make a difference. And it's not necessarily physically saving lives. And she put her hands on my face, Brett, and she looked me square in the eye and said, "God loves you. He has big plans for you. You have a purpose." And that was kind of the extent of it. And at 10, I don't think I really understood it, but those words resonated in my subconscious brain. And I just never gave up on the fact that I had potential. And I think young people today, one of the reasons that they withdraw and are less vulnerable, if you will, and authentic, is their fear of being imperfect and not having purpose or not being empowered to level up to that version of themselves that they can be authentic and not feel at risk when they do that social comparison thing.
Yeah. I'm listening to you tell this story, and I'm asking myself, what were those moments in my life where somebody of authority or somebody of mentorship spoke truth into me? And I have some of those, and I should bring them back out, right? Like, remember those. But I'm also asking myself, if I deem myself a leader, if I deem myself a mentor, what truth am I speaking into others? How am I giving that possibility thinking to the next generation?
Right.
I think it's important.
That is important. You can't give away what you don't have. And, there's a funny saying that's the only thing worse than hope is false hope. But I'll tell you this, if you don't have a dream, even if it's a false dream, by living into it and giving it a full swing, you'll prove yourself right or wrong and be one step closer to the reality you probably need to see.
Yeah. And I think you've got some cool other things in this chapter, like the miracle morning. You talk about Viktor Frankl. But here's the thing that I think is really powerful in great books, is you wrap the chapters up with powerful questions.
Right.
And it's only fair that I ask you these questions because you put them in there to ask me. And the question I want to ask you this session is, what questions are you asking yourself, Rick?
So it's funny that you say that, because, what I've learned about performance is that whatever your ceiling is today, that hopefully if you continue to strive and you work to improve and grow and progress in the right direction, at some point your ceiling becomes your floor. And so the neat thing about the process in the book, in my humble opinion, is, and I was asked, who the avatar, who are you trying to help? And I'm like, anyone that wants a holistic success and wants to be holistically successful. And I said, but the cool thing is, it's not designed to meet you where I want you to be. It's designed to meet you where you are. And then you craft the next chapter in your book, and it's great if you can see the last chapter in advance and sort of build your way into it. But you know what? Just creating this next chapter is probably a win if you're strategic enough.
Yeah.
So there's all 12 categories. And where I literally had a 2-day a retreat with 4 men. And we worked on the wheel of life and sharing perspective. And these are highly successful guys. And it's amazing how inside we're all kids trying to become a better version of ourselves.
Yeah. So, Rick, I love you. Take the teacher hat off for a minute. I want you to put the student hat on. What questions are you asking yourself right now?
Mine is, who needs to be in my tribe? Who do I need in my inner circle that if I mentor with, follow, emulate, and also take advantage in a positive way of their gifts and then apply my gifts, levels up everything and creates a stronger path to a bigger legacy. It's hard to sometimes visualize where I think I can go, but it is easier for me to align with people who are there or on that path, and then emulate and recognize cues that look, clues that look like me, that I can then, again, it's about that fuel to recognize your potential.
Mojo Monday, sir.
That's it.
Stop settling. Come on.
Hey, and by the way, everyone on the call, if you need us to validate you, the fact that you're even alive is a miracle. In fact, the odds are 102,685,000 that you're even living and breathing. So if you're not a miracle, I don't know what is. We love you.